all aboard. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, football fans of all ages, I am Beast Mike. You have now arrived in my train of thought. Let's get into week 9. It's the final week before the trade deadline. Let's see who did fine and who didn't. Let's talk about it. Okay, Houston has a problem. Not just the whole astronaut thing, not just the Astros not making ALCS, not just not getting a hockey team, but they have a problem with their offensive line. Sure, they can run block. Joe Mixon's been excellent this year. They've been very good traditionally for blocking when it comes to their run game. But this pass blocking is alarming. I like Laramie Tunsil. I don't like a lot of the rest of it. It's not good. And against a Jets front that can get pressure on you and doesn't necessarily have to blitz all that much to do it, it's really bad. CJ Stroud got beaten up and over and over and over again. 8 sacks or so. Just an ugly night. And it completely wipes away what was a ugly first half, really in general, but especially for the Jets. And then the second half happens, and Aaron Rodgers went back to his Green Bay form for about an hour and a half. Great performance in the second half for Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, and especially Garrett Wilson, who probably made the second most amazing play of the weekend. We'll get to the most amazing later. But that was a brilliant catch by Wilson. That was a good and much needed win for the Jets, who really did save their season when it came to this win. Houston, I think, will be okay because their division's not good, but that offensive line's got to get fixed immediately if you want to deal with the other heavyweights in the AFC. Let's get the other AFC South versus AFC East game out of the way here too. And it was kind of ugly, but ugly in an exciting way. Think of it as a bad game that was actually kind of good. Drake May looks, yet again, kind of impressive. He shows pretty good poise. He shows good awareness. He can move around in the pocket and run around and make some plays when things break down, and he's not that bad. Just get him some receivers, and he's got a fighting chance. And for Tennessee, their best shots at winning are when Will Levis is not in the games. And to be honest, when healthy, I'm not sure Brian Callahan's going to rush to put Will Levis back in games. That scramble to get the go-ahead, the game-time touchdown at the end of regulation to Stevenson was crazy by Drake May and shows New England's got some hope at quarterback. And that's the first time I can honestly say that since Brady was playing, to be honest. Tennessee does win. Cool, that's fine. Probably hurts their tank efforts. But in truth, both teams kind of won and both teams kind of lost. For the sake of New England, they win because now they're the number 1 overall pick. In the sake of Tennessee, they win because they actually get some actual hope and confidence, and they're the first to conquer the Honolulu flu. For those who don't know, anybody who loses to Detroit automatically loses the next week. The Titans are the first not to do that. Good job, Tennessee. The other really, really ugly game between two bad teams happened in Charlotte. And for once, it was the Panthers who won. That's a little surprising. Not usually on the script, but it happened. Derek Carr was around, and it didn't make too much of a difference, other than Alvin Kamara, who was still a beast. It just didn't seem to matter too much. Bryce Young was able to do his thing for the most part, though he did make some mistakes. Of course he did. But Bryce Young was able to do what he needed to do. He made some plays down the stretch and got the go-ahead score at the very end. Ultimately, this is a good win for Carolina because any win, or for that matter, any non-destruction, is progress for the Panthers, I would say. Good win for Carolina and a devastating loss for New Orleans, who, quite honestly, their season is ended very quickly after week 2. But I guess New Orleans did kind of win because Dennis Allen got fired. And I think that's something a lot of people were clamoring for a long time. Now that we're finally here, New Orleans can really start okay, let's just drop a nuke on this and blow it up. Will the Saints be active today? Because it is the trade deadline day. We'll find out later. Let's stick with some of the bad teams here, and we'll go to Cleveland with this next one. Chargers, you get your free win because Jameis Winston played like the 30 for 30 Jameis, and not even the 30-tutty Jameis. It was a lot of NOs. It was Jameis before LASIK. It was pretty ugly and bad. You got bad Jameis. Chargers take your free win. There's not really too much to say here because, honestly, not much happened aside from Jameis' turnovers. The Chargers basically didn't trip over themselves. Herbert made a couple throws. J.K. Dobbins scored a tutty. And Chargers just did what they were supposed to do when the ops make mistakes. Chargers take your free win and run. I will say the same about the Bengals. Take your free win and run as well because Joe Burrow did what he was supposed to do against terrible teams and carved up a pretty bad Raider defense, not named X Crosby, and really just took care of business on his own. Mike Gesicki had his best day I think I've ever seen him have as a pro. And he actually got Jamar Chase the gritty with him, which was kind of funny because I was looking forward to seeing that. This was a really good day for Joe Burrow, a really good day for the Bengals, a kind of sort of good day for Raiders fans because Luke Getsy also got axed, and we all knew this was going to be a bad idea. It turned into one. The Raiders kept it for far too long. Bengals take your free win and run. Your next game will be far harder because Baltimore really made sure to make a statement against a Broncos team who looked promising and looked pretty good. Unfortunately for Denver, sans Tampa Bay game, a lot of their better defensive performances were against pretty bad teams. And Baltimore made sure to remind them of this immediately. The Ravens punched them in the face and then just kept going. They just repeatedly punched and clawed them in the face and made it look easy and made it look effortless. Lamar Jackson was flawless yet again. Derrick Henry continues to carve people up and is already at 1,000 yards rushing. Zay Flowers was dicing up the Broncos defense. Why Patrick Ham wasn't iced on him, I do not know. But anyway, this was an easy dub for the Ravens. A loud, powerful statement win because Baltimore tends to do that against teams who want to make a statement and claim that they are legit. They usually go to Baltimore, and that's when the legitimacy goes to die for a week. Denver, you might be able to save yourselves because you're catching a familiar foe later on this week. I will talk about that tomorrow. Baltimore, keep it moving, keep it pushing, and don't lose any more stupid games like you did against Cleveland. Washington did not lose a stupid game at MetLife. But Terry McLaurin wasn't involved too much. He did score twice. 2 for 2 in terms of catches and tutties. Not bad. Jalen Daniels was decent. He didn't have to be overly impressive. He just had to not crash the car. He did not. Good day for Austin Eckler. And a decent day for the Commander defense, even though, for some reason, they allowed Daniel Jones to have a passing touchdown at home. That's a little disappointing to do because people don't generally do that. Even with all of that, the Commanders did what they were supposed to do and got the job done. They got the win. They keep things moving. They keep things pushing. And it's a touch in a little closer than I think it needed to be. But Washington will take it, considering how often the Washington Commanders lose games like this. 7-2 is nothing to sneeze at. You're going to have some challenges coming up later on. But for now, take it and run, Washington. As for the Giants, you're towards the bottom, and at least in your division, you're not alone. You're just not with the Commanders this year at the bottom of the NFC East. You're with the Cowboys. And the Cowboys' descent into madness continues because, yikes. This is looking kind of rough for Dallas. Yeah, they're getting a little healthier. DeRon Bland is back and Trayvon Diggs is back. Diggs had no idea where he was going on that touchdown for Drake London. And it just did not look great for the Cowboys as this game went along. Atlanta did what they should have done. Kirk Cousins played pretty well. He was kept relatively clean. Kyle Pitts was not involved, but he didn't have to be. London did his thing, and Mooney did his thing. Both the backs did their thing. And the Cowboys just didn't do enough. That offense is still not moving like it needs to. And that's before Dak Prescott got hurt. And now Dallas' season, which was already done, is looking like, okay, they might just be looking to tank here, or they may be better off tanking. Does Dallas sell? Does Dallas sell off pieces for the deadline today? Something I'm looking forward to seeing. Does Atlanta try once again to address their pass rush? They still don't have one. Will Atlanta still try to do that and beef it up? Because their division's kind of locked down right now. And that's just a matter of seeding for the Falcons. Who would have thought Dallas' season would be over before the trade deadline? Yikes. And to be honest, the best game of the 1 o'clock afternoon slate was in Buffalo. It was a game where Dolphins fans were demoralized based off of the Arizona loss. But they had a reason to be galvanized because the offense was excellent. The run game, the three-headed monster that Miami has, and Mostert, Jalen Wright, and Achane all played well. Sans Mostert's fumble, which was critical. I'll get to why in a moment. Tua was basically flawless. He only had 3 incompletions on the day, and he was excellent for pretty much the entire day. The only mistake he made, and it really didn't matter too much, was the drop snap he had in the first half. Aside from that, Tua was basically perfect. And he had to be because Josh Allen didn't make too many mistakes. The in-on that Allen threw was really on Keon Coleman. That wasn't Allen's fault. Jalen Ramsey just made a smart play. It was a literal 14-point swing because Miami scored a touchdown later. This was a really fun game, and Tua Tagovailoa finally stepped up on the road against a worthy op in Josh Allen. And he had to keep Miami in it because the defense just is undermanned and could not stop the Bills in the second half of this game. That Mostert fumble started the second half, and that was a 3-point drive minimum for the Dolphins. Those points would come back to bite Miami later. 98 seconds left. Tua gets the game tied to Jalen Waddle. Great scrambling ability by Tua to get out of the pocket and make some things happen, throwing it to Jalen Waddle to tie the game. And unfortunately for the Dolphins, 98 seconds was still a tad too much time thanks to the penalty by Jordan Poyer and Tyler Bass, who for some reason made a 61-yard kick after a horrible day for him, where he missed an extra point. He tried to miss a second one almost and doinked it. He almost missed a field goal as well in this game and would have probably missed it had it been 5 yards further back. And this 61-yard kick, he hits pure. Clean, right down the chute with 5 seconds to go. The game's over at this point. It's a devastating loss for Miami, and I would say the third straight demoralizing one because the Dolphins had golden opportunities to win all 3 of these last games and just were a play or 2 away from doing it and couldn't get it done. For Buffalo, this division race is basically over. Even with the Jets winning last Thursday, this division race is pretty much a wrap. But it's a win that is a huge one for Buffalo because of how dramatic it was, and it showed that Josh Allen can still get busy when he has to, when top-level quarterbacks or caliber quarterbacks can play bar for bar against him. Let's get to the 4 o'clock games, and this is looking kind of bad for Chicago. I think they need to move off of Matt Eberflus quick, fast, and in a hurry. The rest of this division, thankfully, the NFC North, the division of doom, is going to destroy Chicago, and it's going to be pretty bad. And that's a good thing, I think, for everybody, especially for Caleb Williams, because he needs an offensive coach ASAP. Arizona did what they should have done. They beat up a kind of weaker Bear defense who didn't have Jaquan Brisker in this game, and they were able to run all over them. Caleb Williams couldn't make any plays at all because his offensive line couldn't protect it. And all in all, this was a relatively easy win for the Cardinals. Now, I was a little surprised by that. I kind of expected Caleb Williams to have that go-off game, that he's going to be a monster type game. Just didn't happen. And it hasn't happened. And unless it's against bad teams, it's probably not going to happen. Arizona's not one of those. They've got a real shot to win the NFC West. Although Seattle and LA are going to try their hardest to prevent it. Arizona already beat the Rams this year. They obviously see Seattle later. And Geno Smith, what are you doing? Seattle's red zone offense is just awful. I can't put my finger on why Geno Smith thought it was a good idea to throw those 2 NOs. One of them literally went 100-plus yards back to the crib and was a 14-point swing. The other of which cost Seattle at minimum 3 and probably 7. This is just really ugly red zone offense. The dimes to Tyler Lockett were awesome, though. And to Lockett, to Smith and Jigba, they were awesome. That was fun to watch. I am a little surprised that Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet didn't have bigger days. That is a little bit shocking to me to see that both those guys aren't more successful this year because of how well and how physical they run and how fast they are sneakily when it comes to running the football. Anyway, this obviously came down to the overtime period, Seattle getting the rock, and they moved down the field effectively, and ultimately, for some reason, they just couldn't get any push for Kenneth Walker. And they turn it over on downs, and then somehow we get the Matt Stafford play where Stafford throws a dime to Demarcus Robinson, who's got that opportunity, I'd argue, probably because Puka Nacua got ejected for the punch that he threw. And Matt Stafford made some really good plays for a lot of this game. And the young dudes on the Rams defense were all over the place against Geno Smith and company. I like what I'm seeing from those young Cubs in LA on defense. Ultimately, the Rams getting healthy is going to be scary for a lot of squads going forward. Big win for the Rams on the road, and another demoralizing loss for Seattle at home. Yeah, Nick Sirianni's a moron. There's no other way to say this. What is the matter with this dude? Why do you feel the need to go for two every time you score? That's so unnecessary. You have an elite kicker in Jake Elliott. Let him do his thing. Doug Peterson was a couple plays away from doing the funniest thing ever when it came to this game. And up 22-0, it didn't look like it was going to happen. It looked like Doug Peterson should have just been fired at the link. But instead, Jacksonville made things work. They got the fumble recovery touchdown, which really set it up and started all of this. Got a couple stops in there, got another touchdown pass in there. And while they were doing it, they went for two twice and got both. Continuing the progression of trying to do the funniest thing ever. And now it looks like, okay, after we get one more stop, we have an opportunity to see, okay, Jacksonville could steal this game. They could win the game. And Trevor Lawrence could have one of those big-time drives that you got to have. He did not finish the gotta-have-it drive. Everything was rolling smooth. They were moving the ball down the field. It was effective. It was efficient. They didn't try to go over the top, and they didn't have to because they had plenty of time. And if Trevor Lawrence were able to run the ball, he could do that too. It was all working out really well. And then he takes a shot to the end zone with Bigsby, and he overthrows him. And Nakobe Dean is ready to go get it. He's a very athletic linebacker. Yoinks it out the air. It's over. It's a wrap. Eagles just take kneel downs and escape this game because this was looking like it was going to be a really ugly loss. And the fire Sirianni chance would have been en masse, and they would have deserved to have been en masse because he would be wasting incredibly awesome high-end talent. Even without A.J. Brown or Dallas Goedert, no problem. Devontae Smith could just make a one-handed catch and look excellent. Jahan Dotson could show up really in his first big-time performance as an Eagle. And speaking of Penn State, Saquon Barkley, who I really called Goku, I thought of him as Goku at Penn State because there wasn't much he can't do. He didn't even do this at Penn State. There were some amazing plays he made while he was a Nittany Lion. But this is a one-of-one type of play. I don't know how you plan on doing this, or how do you find time to learn how to do this? Is it natural, or what do you do? I need to know how you do that. That is a one-of-one type of play. We may never see it again. We may never see it in Madden, unless you get Saquon to do that kind of animation. But still, even with all the high-end talent that the Eagles have, I could argue that the Eagles probably should have lost this game. And with a couple better throws for Trevor Lawrence, they probably would have lost this game. And it might have been the funniest thing ever for Jaguars fans and non-Eagles fans, but for people in the Delaware Valley, it would have been no laughing matter. Now let's get to the main event in Lambeau Field. Okay, Detroit hadn't stepped outside for a game at all since the NFC Championship. All their games were played either in domes or places with retractable roofs. And the Lions were destroying everything in their path for the most part. They were 7-1 and everything was cool. And now they're stepping outside in the elements. There's a whole lot of rain, and the cleats are going to have to be extra grip, and it didn't matter at all. Detroit still went to Green Bay and took their lunch money, and it was relatively easy how they took their lunch money. They got off the bus and basically started mowing down the Packers. It was pretty rough to see for Green Bay's sake. Jordan Love wasn't healthy, but he also wasn't helped. The receivers dropping the ball, not a good look. The pick six at the end of the half effectively ended the game. Never mind the Brian Branch ejection. It really didn't matter to see that either, to be frank. And Detroit basically made the second half relatively garbage time. And there was no point in said half that it looked like the Packers were actually going to win. And that in itself is demoralizing. This is the third straight year for the Lions to win at Green Bay. And it feels like the Lions are going to rule this division for a minute because you probably have the most complete team in the NFL. There's no other way to say this. The Lions might overtake the Chiefs as number one in a lot of people's power rankings. Will they do so in mine? Find that out tomorrow. We're going to stay in the NFC North and let's talk about the Sunday night game real quick. And it's understandable. Joe Flacco probably does give the Colts a better chance to win games going forward, at least for this year, because Anthony Richardson just isn't a good pro passer. Unfortunately, this game Sunday night in Minneapolis does not give us really too much evidence to validate these claims. Joe Flacco wasn't good. Let's be honest here. He was not good. Despite the opportunities that the Colts defense provided for him, despite Sam Darnold seeing kind of ghosts because he was not good in this game. And the defensive touchdown at the start of it, there were some NOs there, and really both guys threw NOs back-to-back in the third quarter of this game. But it was not good football, at least by the quarterbacks, when Sam Darnold wasn't getting the ball to Jefferson or Addison, and then occasionally Aaron Jones. This was a kind of ugly game that Minnesota was able to take care of business and win at the very end because they made fewer mistakes and they got their act together when they absolutely needed to. This was a game that Minnesota had to have to keep up with the Lions, to get some momentum back, to stay really afloat in the NFC wildcard picture and give themselves any sort of shot to catch Detroit. Minnesota had to have it. They got it. Indy blew a chance to make some headway in an AFC South that's not good. Houston may have to get their act together soon, but it might not matter if the second best team in the division, which is the Colts, won't get their act together at all. And then there's tonight. More rain and more issues with the weather in the Midwest. Hopefully everyone's doing okay in Oklahoma. I heard the tornadoes are going to be crazy over there. But anyway, this was the coming out party as a Chief for DeAndre Hopkins. Hopkins did his thing and he cooked a Bucs defense that was getting somewhat healthy. Mr. False Start, aka Juwan Taylor, obviously had a few of those that weren't called in this game, but we're not talking about that right now. What we are going to talk about is how Baker Mayfield, despite being undermanned, did kind of sort of keep up with Pat Mahomes and company. Good to see. Baker was able to get the ball to where he needed to. He was able to make some big plays. And even though DeAndre Hopkins caught it his second touchdown late in this game, Baker Mayfield's credit, he and the Bucs offense were able to answer back against a very good Chiefs defense, I should say. Despite a couple sacks and a holding on the last drive, it didn't matter. Baker cooked. Great drive. I know there was a holding there. There was some other mistakes on that drive, but Tampa Bay was able to make it happen. Baker Mayfield was able to make it happen. The touchdown pass was really nice. That was a great fake at the 1 yard line. Trent McDuffie basically was frozen in time. He had no shot. Either it's a running touchdown for Baker or it's a passing one to Ryan Miller in the back of the end zone. The latter happened. The game was tied. I personally would have gone for two. Try to win the game with the ball in your hands as opposed to leaving it up to the fate of a coin. And that's effectively what happened. They decided not to go for two. Antoine Winfield Jr. almost had two NOs on the last regulation drive, which would have really given Tampa Bay a free shot at a field goal, to be honest. But that didn't go down either. Kansas City was able to escape that. And basically, it was the luck of the coin. Like Baker, I would have picked tails because I do subscribe to the rule. When it came to the coin toss, you pick tails if you have the opportunity against anybody except Tom Brady-led teams, at which point you pick heads because he always seems to win when you pick heads. Unfortunately, heads was the coin, and Kansas City got the ball. And watching it in real time, it looked like death by 1,000 paper cuts. Kansas City didn't attempt to go downfield. They just dink and dunk their way down the field, and it was easy. They took what was given to them, where it was 8-yard passes or 9-yard passes or 5-yard passes that turned to 10-yard passes. It was a couple runs were sprinkled in there that were going for 6 or 7 or 8 yards. It was easy work for Kansas City to dice down the field, and they just took the stuff that was just for sure. They didn't try to be fancy. They didn't try to be cute, except for the shovel pass to Kelsey. That did happen. That was pretty dope. But aside from that, they didn't try to be cute. They just were themselves, which is efficient. And it was death by 1,000 paper cuts. Yes, Jawan Taylor had a false start on the next to last play of the game, but the referees don't seem to call those. They probably should. I also wouldn't have called that face mask. That was not a face mask. They really did job Tampa at the very start of the game. Anyway, Kansas City, at the very end of the game, played like the champions they're built to be and have been the last 2 years. Walk-off touchdown for Kareem Hunt. People are very upset about that, considering they got him for free. And the Chiefs are undefeated still, even though they don't look like an undefeated team. And with that, we have reached the final stop of this train of thought. Week 9 picks were really good. I went 12-3 overall, and through 9 weeks, I am 86-53. Coming up tomorrow, power rankings. Who will be in what tier? And I gotta say, Carolina's made things very interesting because they won. I don't think I'm going to start with them at 32 in my power rankings. As for who I do choose to put at the last, or the king of the zombie tier, if you will, for whom I choose to put at 32, you'll have to tune in tomorrow for the first stop of my next train of thought.